Hello and welcome to Simplified. This is actually not an episode as such, right?
This is three of us having a nice long conversation at a podcasting live event.
That happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, and about how we entered podcasting, how it changed us as people, how it changed us as how we evolved as podcasters.
Yeah, so little genesis behind this when we were asked to come to appear on a podcasting event and talk. Would the Simplified guys like to come and talk about something? They were like, really? Why? What happened? Like, was nobody else available? But we jumped at the opportunity. So the three of us, that's me, Chuck, Naren, whose dulcet voice you just heard, and Tony had gone down, and I think at the last minute we decided that, hey, since it's gonna be a 2022 year end sort of thing, let's talk about content creation in general rather than just talking about podcasts. And really, I think one of the aims that we had in that session was to kind of encourage everyone in the audience and now, of course, the listeners of the show. If you have a content idea, just go for it. I think that was one of the things that we wanted to say, because if the three of us and the four of us could wing it for so long, anyone could.
Yeah, and you do get better at it over a period of time. You know, there is a curve. It's steep at the beginning, and it sort of becomes much better as time goes on. And then you experience the joy of creating something. So
and once in a while, and then maybe 7 years later, you will be invited to a live recording as well. But enough of this intro. This was supposed to be damn short. Let us cut right into the chat that the three of us had. That's again me, Chuck, Naren, and Tony. You will hear us, and we will see you back at the end of this episode then. So enjoy this live-ish episode of Simplified.
Hey guys.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Simplified.
How many guys actually listen to Simplified over here or know what we are? It's okay. Especially the guys who we gave money to.
You can lie.
To raise
this question
answers.
You can tell lies. You can say, I listen.
There are two hands, which is like half the host panel of Simplified.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is pretty much what we're used to anyway.
So anyway, guys, welcome to this, whatever this is going to be. Simplified is a small show where four friends just get together and talk about random things and have a blast doing it and often forget that the record button is on. I'm Chuck, this is Naren, this is Tony, and that is Srikeit pointing in the general direction of Bangalore. He's not here today. And Naren, we thought we'd do something for this. Is that okay? Let's simplify content creation. And as you probably guessed by now, simplification is just taking something serious that exists and breaking it down to its simplest core, basically language that we can understand. And we just hope to make a few jokes and PG Wodehouse references along the way.
So, I think the host mentioned that, Amit, obviously like legend in podcasting, and he basically said, oh, you guys are perfect for this, which is what telling people that anyone can start a podcast. Like if these guys have run for like 300 episodes, like why aren't you getting on with your podcast, right? Like that's basically the spiel that we've got. Naren's the wise one in our gang.
Yeah, I have mastered the art of looking wise. And after we started Simplified, I mastered the art of sounding wise. So that's all. So you don't actually have to be wise or anything. You just have to look wise and sound wise. And that is, I think, how most of our great leaders also made their mark, right? So,
So, thought we'd actually simplify content creation. It's a good time to be doing something like that. A lot of you might have thought, okay, can I start a podcast, or can I start a newsletter, or can I start X content creation project? And because it's around that time of the year as well when you're kind of making resolutions, plans and all that. So we thought that might be a good thing to do. And why you should turn to us for inspiration is if the three of us, the four of us can do this, then I think anyone actually can. So Naren, why don't you recount how we started Simplified back in the day? Back in 2015, when podcasting was still sort of like a...
When 1 plus was in 1, right? 1 plus 1.
Yeah, 1 plus 1. Yeah. I bought that for Simplified, by the way. Our first ever episode was about the Greek economic crisis, ladies and gentlemen. An episode which was titled...
Kiss My Tsipras.
Tsipras being never mind. These are the kind of jokes that make it to Simplified.
In about 30 seconds, we realized we really had no idea what was going on. So we started making a lot of, fun jokes and I don't know about fun, but jokes.
Yeah, jokes. Along the way, we figured out a few things. We realized that we were better without a script than with it. Case in point. I don't know whether this could be better.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I think it's fair warning to the audience. You're looking at peak performance because none of us have anything prepared. It may not look like it, but this is what peak performance of Simplified looks like.
Yeah, along the way, Srikeit and Tony joined the elite Simplified panel. Each of them bringing with them a unique set of skills to augment what Naren and I already brought to the organizational table. And yeah, it's been a blast ever since. I think we learn a lot every time we do an episode. We learn about something. We learn about each other a lot. And like I said, sometimes we just forget that the record button is on and we just have a lot of fun doing it. And I think that is my number one, I don't know if we can call this a tip, but just have fun doing content. If you're going to start off by saying, hey, I want to become the number one podcast in India, or I want to make a lot of money out of it, or whatever, I think you might be starting off on the wrong front.
No, I think one of the things that we do as a podcast is sell ourselves short. We actually have a fairly loyal fan base. So if you're starting out in podcasting, the only thing that we will say is that I don't think Chuck and Naren ditched the script before they were well into the podcasting space, right? And you need to find your comfort with a co-host, with someone else who will probably back it up for you. It's always great to have a collaborator for two reasons, right? One is that you can bounce ideas of each other, but the other and more important thing is that it's a brilliant commitment device, right? If you have a New Year resolution of sorts, you will realize that actually Pan, who's sitting in the front row, told us this. There's something called the fatty solstice, which is basically when anyone remembers Foursquare? What a great time to be alive that was, right? So on Foursquare, they saw that the check-ins to gymnasiums and McDonald's sort of intersected around February 11th, right? After which McD took over, right? And gym just went down. And we all know this. We make the same resolution every year and we fail to keep it. It is simply because there is no commitment device, right? And having a collaborator, I think, is a great commitment device.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I realized is the collaborator doesn't need to be somebody who has the exact same skills as you do. In fact, it's ideally somebody that's opposite. So if you are great at, say, storytelling, having somebody else who is like a photographer or something might be a great complement to your skills. And this, not just for podcasts, but for newsletters or, anything else. So yeah, that would be tip number 2. I think tip number 3 would be don't try to find your perfect episode. In number 1, don't wait for that I hate the man with a vengeance, but one good thing Mark Zuckerberg has said is if you ship the perfect product, you've probably waited too long. And I think that's true of content as well. Don't try to have episode 1 or newsletter edition number 1 as the perfect thing, because let's face it, how many people are going to be reading it right off the bat? You kind of need to hone your skills. We are almost 300 episodes in and I think we are still finding our way.
There is an inspiration poster I had seen somewhere. It says ready, fire and aim. So oftentimes
is this in Elon Musk's office?
Yeah, there must be Elon Musk. Yeah. Elon Musk does that all the time, right? I hope he doesn't use that strategy for his spaceship launches, but otherwise it's good. And there's one of our sacred sort of canon Bible kind of thing is yes minister and yes prime minister. So in one of those episodes, Humphrey is aghast because Bernard has been telling people things. And so Humphrey is telling him, Bernard, what will happen if people start talking about things? He says, what? Eventually they start thinking about them. So this is what happens in podcasts. When you actually talk in yourself, as a podcast creator, in myself at least, it sets off a chain of, you really start thinking about things, you discover layers about yourself and other people and things that you didn't suspect exist.
Yeah,
so
we now have a rule among the three of us. Whenever an interesting conversation starts, we always stop each other and say whatever you're saying for the
podcast.
Yeah.
And
we actually never had a conversation outside this.
Yeah, pretty much actually. I mean, it's fun to catch up with friends. The best way to do it is build a podcast. Actually, it's true. Because
why don't you talk about?
No, I mean the audience for all practical purposes is invisible, right? So it takes away that barrier. I mean, I can only do this because I'm picturing all of you in your underwear right now, so no pressure. But otherwise, the podcast gives you a perfect sort of mode for you to shut out the audience and just listen to your friend and do it, right? And just building on what you said about never being too precious with your content, one thing that we've realized is the episodes that we've prepped for the most and thought would be like super hits have never really done great. And like there'll be this random episode where we are like, okay, let's ditch this topic, and Naren's like, let's talk about ice cream. And like apparently because he's like older in age than we are, he can no longer eat ice cream, and it's like
it
one
was
of
a
the
sore
most
wound,
popular.
right? So it was the wages of a lot of sin, and I was told that I couldn't eat ice cream. And as destiny would have it, I decided to do a podcast on ice cream. All that pain came out. World being what it is, instead of laughing at all my, sympathizing all my pain, they started laughing at it, which made for a very good podcast episode. But that's the thing, right? So flow is important. It is an acquired skill. You start talking, you're very wooden in the beginning, and after some time
Yeah, I think the nicest thing somebody said about our show was it just sounds like I'm eavesdropping in on a conversation of four friends just having fun drinking beer in a bar or something. And I think...
And I want to interrupt and like add a...
Yeah, and somebody actually said I wanted to interrupt. And I think that makes us very happy if people think of us that way. Honestly, when Naren and I started this, 5, 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was, we never thought that this would actually go somewhere. It was just an outlet for the two of us and say, okay, let's see what...
And look where we are now.
And look where we are now. Talking about podcasting in a 5-star hotel and...
Yeah.
No, but I think like one of the things is that what we've already mentioned is don't be too precious about your content.
Yeah.
Because like the only thing that can happen is no one pays attention to it if you can't hold their attention, right? Like it doesn't matter. No one's gonna boo you. No one's gonna come up to you and say, "Hey, aren't you that guy who made that terrible podcast?" People just don't care. So do whatever it is that you want.
In fact, I would say if you've reached the level where somebody has heckled you that way, there are probably 50 others who probably thanked you saying, "What a great show you guys put up."
Yeah. And the other thing that people normally get stuck with is that they say, you have to find your voice and stuff like that. Right? I have a 6-year-old daughter. The only thing she told me is, Dad, please use your big boy voice when you record a podcast, right? Because when I get excited, I apparently get very shrill, which is probably about to happen now. But on the podcast, like I have this like very subtle voice, like, the sexy uncle who you can't see, who probably has gray hair and stuff like that. But like, finding your voice is overrated. Just go for it and like put yourself out there, right? So just to wrap that up, don't be too precious about your content.
Yeah.
But I would say be very conscious about your process, right? So the other thing that we've done, Chuck and me had run a newsletter for 200 weeks, which we didn't stop because our fans wanted us to, but like just because we wanted to do different things. And to be honest, the thing that I think we are most proud about is the jokes that we edited out of that particular thing, right? Like, and after a while, it was like your own editorial voice. You knew that I wouldn't cover this particular news item or make this joke. Right? And it becomes sort of like muscle memory.
Yeah, it becomes muscle memory after a while. Like, one cool thing to do is if you take any of your favorite content creators, right? It could be Simblified, it could be Amit Verma's The Seen and the Unseen, it could be absolutely anything, a YouTube channel, Instagram account. Go right back and see the first pieces of content that they put out. You'll see it's super different from what they are right now. Like Amit's show is a great case in point, The Seen and the Unseen, probably one of the best known shows in India right now.
Also the origin story.
And the origin stories are, Simplified had a role to play in Seen and the Unseen, but that's another talk show for another day.
Hey, this is the non-live Chuck and Naren back again to say that, hey, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We didn't get a break when we were talking in the live episode, but we will take one now. So we are going to do that right now.
And welcome back. That was a little break and on to the live-ish show. Hope you enjoyed.
If you listen to the earlier episodes, they're all like 20, 30 minutes, and Amit is still kind of trying to find his voice, both in as in like what are the kind of questions to ask and all that. And by about episode 50, he's kind of found it, and he's also comfortable expanding that 20 minutes to an hour. And of course, today he's one of the best known. That sense of authority kind of comes out, and of course, the shows very frequently tip 5 hours in length. So he's kind of found his niche. Very honestly. It still surprises us when people say that they listen to the show as much as they do. We were given a very pleasant surprise when Spotify Wrapped happened recently, and we were like, oh, wow, that many people actually like the show, listen to the show, and is their number one show. So,
and only on that particular platform, which like doesn't even hold a candle to Amazon Music. So like, like so many more people listen to us anyway, right? But
Well done, good save.
hey, don't heckle me from the audience, man. Like,
Good save. Good save. But yeah, that's basically what we're trying to say is if you have a content creation idea or if you have ever thought, hey, can I do this? Just start. Just start, really. Don't worry about what people are going to think. Don't worry about are you ready for it. Don't worry about whether you're going to make money out of this or become famous. It doesn't matter. Take out some time from your week. Just start. It could be a podcast, it could be a newsletter, it could be a private Instagram account of your doodles for all you matter. And when you're ready, release it to the world. It could be just stuff that you write on post-it notes and leave for yourself. Whatever the case may be, at the end of 60 days, you look back and say, oh wow, there's 60 more post-it notes with random messages on them than I had when I started. Then something will happen as a result of that. I think that's pretty much.
yeah, and I think the other thing that happens is over the course of producing enough content, you find that you've changed as a person, right? I don't know if any of you subscribe to the Ken and read the Nut Graph, which is like PGK's sort of take on some things that happened. And like we found sort of like a sync in that where he basically said after a year, so it takes about 52 weeks, but like he writes it on a Friday night, and being in Bangalore, you can imagine how much of difficulty it is to get out on a Friday night. So he changed that into channeling a newsletter. And he basically said for the first 20 weeks, he'd be completely paralyzed, thinking, what am I going to write next week, right? And it would take him the entire week to do that. And we sort of resonate with that, right? And like, but towards week 40 or so, and like probably as you get into it more and more, it just flows naturally around, I would say, week 40, right? So if you are going to start with something, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's podcasts, whatever it is, don't look at the metrics for the first 40 weeks, right? Don't look at your Spotify app for the first year. It is probably likely that
Metrics?
no one...
What are metrics?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like something that's replaced the imperial system, unfortunately. But yeah, and you will find that after a while, you just get into that flow state where it's much easier to do it. And I think most podcasts, Chuck, you will know as a content consultant, don't make it to an episode 2.
Yeah, this is nice that, so around 90 to 95% of podcasts don't have a second or third episode, which I think is a fascinating stat. And just like, just kind of like underscoring Tony's point over here. I once asked Amit Verma again, like, what is like, if you had one tip or one takeaway for a potential content creator apart from just start, what would it be? And he said something very nice. He's like, at the end of 6 months, if you haven't either learned something new or if you haven't enjoyed it, that is the time that you should stop. I think that is pretty sound advice. Where like, I think we are 300 episodes almost, and I have an absolute blast every time we record it.
Yeah,
It's
Or
just
so
fun.
I am contractually obligated to say to the two of you.
Yeah, correct. It's a blood pact.
It's a blood pact.
So our pact was, if we get to 30 and neither of us have made it big in like content creation, we're going to start a podcast with each other, and basically that's how we got it going.
Yeah, that's how we got into this.
I think the idea there was, it was basically during the pandemic, right? And like the only way you could, there was this very active WhatsApp group of cricket lovers that we had, and I was like, listen, like it would be so much better if I could talk to these people, because anyway we're not going out, we're not doing anything. So why don't we start a podcast? And we called it the friendliest cricket podcast, right? It doesn't have a fixed panel every week, right? It has a different panel. But what's happened over like 48 episodes that we've done is that we've become much closer friends. And this is like transcontinental in its truest nature. One person is in Switzerland, one person is in Australia, one person is in Bangalore, Whitefield, I should say, which is like from, yeah. And like now we're very, very close friends. And in fact, the last episode that we did is with a podcast called the Pakistan Cricket Podcast, right? And like we had a panel which was 50% India and 50% Pakistan. And we called it the India-Pakistan Cricket Podcast, right? Like, probably like in the history of content creation, never has there been like such an equal representation where you're not chest bashing saying like, my country is the greatest. It's like about shared trauma from the defeats, right? Because like India, Pakistan, whenever the match is scheduled, like 3 days before you're in the zone, right? And you go through a variety of emotions, but never will you get to reconcile with the other side because all of your friends are probably like people you know, right? But like this happened purely because we thought, yeah, why not? Let's
and to me as an outsider and semi-cricket fan to be listening to that show has found a voice, and many of the things that we spoke about and are proud of Simplified, like we have like a certain way we start, which is the running joke for Simplified is our producers have always told us, please introduce the show before you guys start rambling. And the running joke on Simplified is we still don't know how to start the show. For 300 episodes, we have like, welcome to Simplified, which is something, something, something. Sometimes we forget that and just jump right into the episode. So that's like part of the charm, I'd like to say, but our producers will use another word for it. And then there is a ending which Naren will do for this episode as well. There are certain jokes along the way which only people who have listened to the show for a while will get. Shout out to anyone who wants their microwaves repaired from Micronesia. Polynesia, microwaves from Polynesia. So again, these are all just such in-jokes. And the same thing I see for Tony Show and a lot of others as well. If there are any fans of the Bugle podcast, for instance, one of our greatest inspirations, Andy Zaltzman and once John Oliver and now a rotating cast of comedians. You will find your voice along the way. You will find these little things that you do. If anyone's listened to the Seen and the Unseen, 2 years back I did this random joke thread on Twitter where I made puns on various things associated with the Seen and the Unseen, which could be amidst certain tics or questions that he asks all the time.
I had a dream.
I had a dream, those kind of things. And I thought 10 people would get it because, whatever, it's a podcast as it is a 5-hour episode, whatever. And I got like some 200 retweets just on that thread. And so many people resonated with it. The point I'm trying to make is if you have a voice, the sharper your audience is, it doesn't matter whether it's, in fact, I would say the sharper your audience is, the more they will resonate with you. Don't go too broad with your content. I think people are looking for, hey, that show will give me this, or this Instagram account makes me feel nice and happy, or that photographer's output makes me feel a certain way about travel. If that makes sense. Just like how you might listen to a certain band when you're in a certain state of mind, I think the same way with respect to content. So
And I think marrying some of the points that we mentioned earlier, don't hesitate to get started, but at the same time, like Quentin Tarantino has said that all of what he does is inspired, right? And same goes for content creation. So you'll remember when Chuck pitched the newsletter to me saying, shall we do this, the Bugle, but as a newsletter? And I'm like, yes, let's do it. And Chuck, your other great podcast, The Origin of Things.
The Origin of Things. Okay, so a quick plug for another show that I do. I do a short format podcast where I basically talk about the origin stories of various brands. This season I'm doing songs and music, but it's a dramatized story and I reveal the name of the brand only at the end. So it's a nice guessing game for the listener as well. What are they talking about? And for me, the challenger as a writer is always to, did I just say challenge as a writer?
Challenge as a writer, wow.
I always wanted to say that in a panel. Okay, so for me, the challenge as a script writer is how do I keep the person's mind over here while I want to put them over here. So at the end, like one spoiler I'll give you is the brand was Bisleri and I kept, they should not think that it's a mineral water brand. So when I kept saying drink so that people would keep thinking it's like
monkey shoulder.
Oh, wow, that was fun. Had a little too much monkey shoulder on my, and the inspiration for that was very much a podcast called The Way I Heard It by a podcaster called Mike Rove from the US. And he did that exact same thing, but for people. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. And let's do it for brands. So I think a lot of content creation projects really start off that way. Even if you speak to Amit Verma, he will say, it's not like the Seen and the Unseen was a wholly original idea. Who was that who once said, everything I do was built on the shoulders of giants so many years ago? I think the same thing holds true, if not more, even now. Even if you think of a super original band like the Beatles, they will be upfront that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were, my inspirations. So don't be afraid to get inspired by and put your own remix on top of things.
Yeah. It's like Michael Scott saying, you miss 99% of the shots you don't take, -Wayne Gretzky, -Michael Scott, right? He's quoting a quote. I mean,
nice.
Like the originality will at the end of the day come from your voice as you build the show. So if by all means what it lets you get started is borrowing from something that's already been done, by all means go for it.
Wouldn't it be interesting if we did this with this? I think that's a great formula for you for 2023. Good luck with your content creation efforts. Have a great year.
People are taking down notes.
People are taking down notes. Or either that or they're texting like, when is this going to end? So Naren, you know what to do. We always end a show with stays something simplified. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And sorry for spilling monkey shoulder.
Before they head off stage, can I? Please, wait. Can I invite the Amazon Music team to come and give them a small memento? Or a big one? Big one's fine, perfectly fine as well. Amazon Music team, where are you guys? Amazon Music team. They didn't expect you to finish so soon. Can somebody tell the organizing team? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
This is a legit problem afflicting Indian men that we finish too quickly. But okay.
Hey, listen. Let's give a big round of applause for Chuck, Naren, and Tony. Please give them a big round of applause. Listen to their podcast on Amazon Music, and now hopefully the Amazon Music. I see somebody scurrying out there. It's probably the Amazon Music team. Is it the Amazon? No, two young, pretty ladies who walked in who are not with Amazon Music. But listen, before the Amazon Music team comes in, since you guys have finished early and about to get off. Oh Lord. No, that just came out all wrong. But listen. Can I ask you guys a question? Sit down again. We'll wait till the Amazon Music team comes and we'll have a session here. This is what I do as well, apart from hosting stuff. I host a talk show called The MJ Show, on which I have a whole bunch of people from the music industry. So let me ask you guys a question. In your journey making podcasts and doing what you do right now, has there been a moment where you felt like, okay, right now we feel like this podcast is working. People are actually listening to us. And forgive me if you've said this earlier. I have to admit I had to walk out, meet up with other people. But if you've already answered this, okay, you've not. Great. Good question then. All right. So my question is, was there a moment in your journey where you felt like this is working, I think we should spend more time and effort and invest ourselves into taking this podcast forward?
It's happening right now. Yeah.
Decided to have a live show, and we really didn't know what to expect. So we had prepared a little bit about normal series, and we found that the crowd was participating like 150%.
First of all, there was a crowd. We expected 10 people to show up.
How surprising has it been for you guys? Because when you make a podcast, it's a very isolating thing.
Yeah.
Right? You're in your room, you're in your
Yeah.
studio, wherever it is doing it. You don't know if there are 10 people hearing it or 10,000 or a million people.
Yeah.
So when you do a live event is when you really understand that's the impact that we are having.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Talk about your experience of actually meeting up people live. By the way, in case the Amazon Music team is here, I am just killing time with my friends, my new friends here. But hopefully we are getting some interesting answers. Has the Amazon Music team come? They have? No? Okay. We'll continue, man. So you're now guests on the MJ show. Let's go for it. Please tell me about this.
Okay, so it wasn't just a live event. There have been... Okay, one of the coolest things that ever happened to me personally is when... this was at NH7 Weekender 2019 when a friend and I were just in line to watch one of our favorite bands, Opeth. And we were both just talking about what we hoped they would play. And somebody turned around and said, "Are you Chuck from Simblified?" I recognized the voice.
Oh, that's amazing, man.
So that to me was one of the nicest, coolest things that's ever happened to me. But yeah, it's always surprising when people, just even send us a DM saying that they listen to the show and all that. Because I'll be honest, I'm not saying this like, just because I don't take the effort to do that for a lot of my favorite content creators. I think the craziest thing that happened is somebody had an exam the next day. We had just dropped an episode on that topic, and instead of preparing, he listened to the episode and he passed.
Oh,
that,
wow.
I think, was the coolest thing that's ever happened on the show.
brilliant.
But yeah, to answer your question, it's always amazing when that happens. Yeah.
General fans are very... fans is like a very celeb term, but listeners are very...
Listen, I'm going to stop you there to tell you one thing. Embrace the word fans. There is no problem with it. Because, so at 8:30, there's going to be a session where I'm doing a show right now. I'm doing a show right now because we are waiting for the Amazon Music team. But so at 8:30, Malini is going to host a session where I'm going to be with two other RJs. We did radio for a long time. And even as a radio jockey, when you begin, you know, it's exactly like podcasting in the sense that you don't know who's listening, how many people are listening, and they never see your face. Back then, especially now, radio jockeys are everywhere. You can see them on social media, but 18 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody saw our faces. So if people recognized you by your voice, they were legit fans. Embrace that word and embrace those people, because those are the guys who are actually making what you do worthwhile. So, you know, don't be afraid to say fans, because you've earned the right to for those people to say that they are your fans, and you've earned the right to have fans. So please, let's give them a big round of applause for that. That's amazing.
Also, also, can I have your number and do you take therapy sessions?
Listen, whether the Amazon Music team is, they are. Okay, so let's give a big round of applause to these three gentlemen once again. And Amazon Music team is going to give them an extra memento because they're late now. Add one more Alexa in there. No, I'm just kidding. But let's give them a big round of applause once again, guys.
And a big round of applause for a very, very kind
Thank
host
you very
here.
much.
Please, thank you.
Joshi. So, unexpected bit of extra talking that happened here, but that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
So that was it. That was us talking about our experiences and our learnings and how we, how the whole experience changed us a little bit. And I hope all of you found it.
I had a blast, Naren. I don't know, but I had an absolute whale of a time over there. It's also kind of interesting, right? When you and I started this, 7 years or something ago, I don't think we would have ever thought that this would have happened someday. I mean, it's not like something huge.
And it was so different. I mean, it's laughable. We wrote scripts, we read out, and then we had stuff written in the margin of the script saying that it's just, and we would oftentimes get so engrossed with each other's the content of each other's script. Anyway, you heard all that.
But one thing, right? What we just said right now, when we started, we never imagined that this would happen over here. I think this is true of anybody who has ever created content, not just in the digital age. So many musicians, some of my favorite bands have said in interviews that when we picked up the guitar at the age of 15, 16, we didn't think that we would be playing over here. You have those dreams, yes, but you don't realistically think that they're going to happen. And I think in all those cases, what ended up happening was there's a little bit of talent, yes, a little bit of luck also, obviously, but I think just a lot of hard work and consistency. Even if you take heavy metal bands that you won't think that these are hard workers in the conventional sense. These guys work their asses off to get to where they are. And the same thing for music, for sports people, the same thing for writers, the same thing for politicians arguably as well. So I think it's just a matter of starting, learning, being self-aware, and just having fun, learning along the way. At least that's what we have done over here on Simplified. So thank you, Naren. This is the last, by the way, this is the last people are going to hear from us for this year. So we hope you've had a great year. We really wanted to do a yearly wrap up, but unfortunately Srikeit and Tony couldn't make it to this particular recording. So that's probably something you're going to hear from us in early Jan or so. So have a great year, guys. Hope you had a good year and hope you have a better one.
So stay safe, stay creative, and stay simplified, guys. And see you in the next year.